Good day, everyone. I am Wendelin Claro from PROFED04. Today, we will discuss about avoiding unattended messages. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy learning. As a teacher, you deal with many students at once. Some student interpretation of what you say and do are likely to differ from those of other students. Obviously, you are continually risking misinterpretation. Unattended messages unwittingly communicated to students by teachers can cause many of the misunderstanding that lead student to be off task. Communicating with your student cannot be completely avoided, but you can reduce the frequency with which you send unattended messages to students by modeling a business-like attitude and avoiding disrupting your own learning activities. In case 4.39, a teacher failed to display an adequate business-like attitude with her student and consequently communicate that engagement in learning activity is not the highest priority. Miss Conley is conducting a lecture discussion for her 11th grade health science class with her principal. Miss Rodriguez appeared in the classroom doorway and beckons Miss Conley to her. Miss Conley told her class, "Excuse me, I have some business with Miss Rodriguez. Please be quiet until I'm through." Miss Rodriguez then engaged Miss Conley in a 9-minute conversation about a meeting to be held that night. In the meantime, the student thoughts turned to things beside the content of the health science lecture discussion. When Miss Rodriguez leaves, Miss Conley turns to her class and said, "Okay, let's get back to our discussion. Where were we?" Modeling a business-like attitude. In case 4.40, Mr. Chinner's business-like attitudes tends to convince students that what goes on in class is of a primary importance. Mr. Chinner is conducting a lecture discussion for his 11th grade health science class when his principal, Miss Midor, appears in the classroom doorway and beckons Mr. Chinner to her. Mr. Chinner turned to Miss Midor and said, "Just a moment, Miss Midor. Phil is responding to a comment about whether or not it is sensible to take this congestant." Phil takes 30 seconds for his response while Miss Chinner listens intently. Mr. Chinner, class, keep Phil's thoughts in mind while I quickly check Miss Midor. Miss Midor then tries to involve Mr. Chinner in a conversation about a meeting that night, but instead Mr. Chinner uses 40 seconds to arrange to speak with her at another time. He turns to the class, "Now that you have a little time to think about Phil's concern regarding the danger of this congestant, do you think the warning label we looked at earlier is adequate?" "Okay, Audrey." Audrey, like Phil said. Mr. Miller, 6th grade student, are busy with an interdisciplinary assignment in which each reads about a problem and writes out a proposal for a solution. The room is quiet when Robert and Chad begin talking to one another from their places in the back of the room. Mr. Miller, seated at his desk in front, noticed them and in a loud voice announced, "This work is supposed to be done on your own. I don't want any talking until everyone is finished." Chad and Robert cut out the talking right now. All Mr. Miller's students look up and listen during Mr. Miller's announcement. Some turn to see what Chad and Robert are doing when he mentioned their names. Some continue to watch them for a while to see if they talk again. Avoiding disruptive teacher behavior. Teachers fail to model business-like attitude when they disrupt their own learning activities. Such disruption carried an intended message. Disruptive behavior is acceptable. Contrast case 4.41 with case 4.42. Case 4.42. Miss Tony's 6th grade students are busy with an interdisciplinary assignment in which each reads about a problem and write out a proposal for a solution. The room is quiet when Andrew and Julius begin talking to one another from their places in the back of the room. Miss Tonley quietly and discreetly walks over to them, catches their eye and whispers in a business-like tone, "Get back to work." Only the student close to Andrew and Julius notice Miss Tonley's action. Mr. Mr. Miller disturbed his entire class, leading them to become disengaged to get Robert and Chad back on task. Miss Tony, on the other hand, dealt with the disruptive talking without disturbing students who remain on task. Here are some tips
Turn
to avoid
negatives into positive
unintended
SDH
messages.
positive behavior. Model the behavior you expect. Establish a class code of conduct. Communicate well. Recognize good behavior and achievements. Proactively develop relationships. Have a quiet area.